Welcome to The Strain Podcast, a Southgate Media Group production, where we talk all about Guillermo del Toro's horror fantasy series, The Strain. We are currently covering the series' fourth and final season on FX. I'm your host, Blair Knight Graves, executive producer and host of Professional Geek Podcast, and with me today is my co-host, Kyle Tremblay. You can find us on Twitter at Blair Loves TV and at Kyle Loves TV, and you can follow this podcast Twitter handle at The Strain Pod. Hi, Kyle. How you doing today?
You know, Blair, I gotta be more careful about what I wish for, because last week I said all I wanted is a Strain episode without Zach in it, and we did get that, and so I'm happy.
You also wished for a couple of other things that I would like to bring up.
Well, we'll probably get into those, but we did get a Zach-free episode this week, and yeah, we got that. We did. We got, your wish was granted. Yeah.
As per usual on The Strain, we complain about something and then they give it to us the next week and then it is still not satisfactory.
Yeah, no, that's the par for the course. Welcome to The Strain.
Welcome to The Strain. All right, Kyle, today you and I will be discussing Season 1, Episode 1, titled The Blood Tax.
Episode 2.
Sorry? Season 4, Episode 2. Wow.
No, I think it's just it's a Freudian slip in that every episode of The Strain feels like we're starting at square one.
Yes, starting at square one. So I apologize, listeners. We are going to be discussing Season 4, Episode 2, titled The Blood Tax, which was written by Liz Fang, who previously wrote the episodes White Light, Madness, The Assassin, and Quick and Painless. And a couple of those episodes she co-wrote with Regina Corrado. When I was initially looking at who wrote this episode, I thought for a second, Liz Fang, the woman who writes about how much she hates women on The Strain. But I rechecked, and that's actually Regina Corrado. But nonetheless,
yeah,
Liz Fang is now in that camp, I think.
Well, we really this was you last week on this podcast, and I hate to start this by talking about our own podcast last week, but I think we said a lot of things that were prophetic. And one of the things you said is that briefly, you feared that Fett was being put in a forced breeding situation where those women grabbed him, and you thought we were headed to a Jason Stackhouse situation where like women are trying to procreate with him. Lo and behold, we have reached that situation, but of course it was with a woman.
With many, but with our only single female character.
Yes, our one female character has found herself in that situation.
Yes. Yeah. And also, you said that you wanted to see behind the scenes of how the partnership was working. And, and what were the mechanics of that, and how did they create the marketing plans, and how did they get people to agree to things? And we got some of that too.
We did get some of that, yeah.
It's a little bit of we both were prophets, and we both are disappointed by our prophecies. Well, actually, I didn't ask you how you felt about this episode. I'm just assuming, based on the last 3 minutes, that you were as unhappy as I was.
Not good, Blair.
Not good?
Not good.
Good.
Not good. Is my 2-word review. Not good. If I was still writing for a website about television, my review would have been not good. This was not good. Not a good episode. No. Not a good start to the season.
No.
Bad. Very bad.
So we touched on this last week, that we were really saddened that our single person of color character who is left. Well, I suppose that's not entirely true now that Charlotte is with Fett, and the characters that are with F, whose names I don't recall right now. But
of our lasting cast,
of
the cast that isn't going to be killed in an episode or two.
Right, exactly. Yes. And our one female character we're missing, and lo and behold,
yeah.
We did get Gus, and we got Dutch, who we were sorely missing in the last episode, and I think that the Gus stuff was fine, and we can talk about that, but the Dutch stuff was wacky bananas upsetting.
Yeah.
Like,
the Dutch stuff was wild.
Like,
It
started on the worst possible note with terrible sound effects. I just need to put it out there.
Oh, really?
See,
I don't notice these things.
It was horrible. I knew exactly what was happening because of the sound design. It was horrible.
Boy.
But
yeah.
No, go ahead.
So, big picture. I want to get my big picture point out of the way, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty details of what's going on. I suspect you're going to have a lot of thoughts about what's wrong with the Dutch situation, but just big picture, because, you know, on the surface of it, last week we complained, and we often make this complaint, that the show often does not have any focus whatsoever on female characters or people of color, and that's not to say that the criticism is that those things in and of themselves are a problem. It's that really hinders the show as a whole, because it makes the stories much less interesting to have only the perspective of basically a couple middle-aged white men.
Yeah.
Like that is a less interesting version of a television show than one that includes more of Gus and Dutch and
Nora, R.I.P.
Nora, yeah, like characters that have maybe potentially different backgrounds. Like that, having characters more diverse characters creates the opportunity for more diverse stories. The problem is the strain frequently tells the same story with these two characters, with Gus and Dutch, and the story is exactly this, which is Gus behaves in a way that a villain would behave. And in this episode specifically, what I'm talking about is what Gus does to his cousin by forcing him to let him in this plant to steal things with apparently not a noble goal. Like, he's working with Cream to make profit, I guess. I mean, I'm sure Gus has some sort of heroic ulterior motive, but like, what he does to his cousin is evil. His cousin is working a job, and he directly puts his cousin at risk and doesn't even, like, within like 2 sentences of meeting up with him, Gus is forcing his cousin, like literally forcing his cousin to put his own life on the line for no good reason whatsoever. Like, Gus doesn't even give him a reason. He's like, hey, we have to steal things, let us in. And when the cousin resists, Gus, like, overpowers him. Like, he's like, hey, we're family. You do this for family. It's like, no, you don't. That's a monstrous thing to do. What Gus did to his cousin is like he with no regard at all for the life of his family member, he leveraged this so-called love of family to get him to do something. That's like something characters like Game of Thrones do. Like, that's a Lannister move.
But that's
like
what Gus does in every season.
That's what I'm saying. Every Gus story stems from this point, which is Gus is behaving in a, like, remarkably selfish way that puts other people at risk. It's like last season when, in freeing his Strigoi mother, he is killing cops who are not, like, they are just doing their jobs, and he is killing Feraldo's cops because he has this misguided thought about his own mother and, like, turning her back. Like, every Gus story, like, he's this, as I've been saying since the first episode, he's this gangster with a heart of gold character, yet their only concept of this character is that he must do evil. Like, he is so naturally hardwired to be evil that the strain just casually has him doing things that they would never have F do without, like, serious, like, reflection. Like, if F did something like this, there would be a story in a future episode about how regretful he is about it. But with Gus, it is just assumed this is how Gus behaves, this is how Gus always carries himself, this is who Gus is, the audience is gonna love him because he's Gus. Like, it is so, like, weirdly, like old-fashioned in its view of Gus, and that it just really bothers me how every Gus story plays out.
And it's deeply upsetting because he is our only perspective person of color.
Right, and the show thinks he's a monster. The show portrays him as a sympathetic character, but deep down, the writers in the show think he's a monster and treat him as such. Because he never, they don't even give him a moment of regret about what he does to his cousin and how he put his cousin's life on the line. They give him the moment where he forces Cream to let his cousin into the group. Gus made that decision for his cousin. That's not a decision that's Gus's to make. And it really, like, that was what bothered me about this episode, is how little the show acknowledged that, and how Gus had no consequences at all. And it's proof they don't think of Gus as a person. They think of Gus as a gangster with a heart of gold archetype, and that is all he is. And they never give him any of the sort of self-reflective moments that, like, F or Fett would get if they did something like this. Yeah. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, you said it better than I could. I don't know that I have anything more to offer than to say that I think it's despicable that that's what they do specifically to Gus.
Yeah.
Because you could tell that story with Fett in it, if you reframed the conversation, but they wouldn't, like.
Well, or if they did, it would be like Fett would acknowledge that what he did was bad. But with Gus, they don't even feel the need to have that happen because this is how they always treat Gus, and they just sort of rely on their own framing that the audience is going to take that Gus is a good guy, even though he's not. Like, if you take Gus's actions on balance, a character who started working for the Master, and then who joined our team, but who consistently either kills or puts innocents in danger, and for, like, to little effect, like, Gus is not a good guy. No. And yet the show just sort of frames him as a good guy and just takes for granted, like, oh, that's what gangsters do.
Yeah.
Like that it gets under my skin. But I think what got under your skin this episode was the treatment of Dutch, and that's what I want to hear from you about.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about that. Although I do want to pair this thought together as a bridge between those thoughts.
Yeah, definitely.
That, the two characters that we have now seen be enslaved are our person of color in the last season by Feraldo, and now Dutch as a woman by the partnership, which is pretty freaking despicable. I don't really know that there's any, like that whole not good thing, pretty freaking despicable. That's all that I really...
That's why. It's like this episode is just like... And it's so... The Strain does it so casually, too. Yeah. It's like, the Strain... I was thinking about it, like, there's always talk in the internet about, like... in corners of the internet, I should say. Half the internet, about there are too many female heroes now on shows. Like, there's finally one. Like, there's a female Doctor Who now, and of course, like, all the internet people, the internet citizens, come on and say, oh, that's the women running rampant. Where have all the male heroes gone? It's like, wow, you should be watching The Strain, guys. What a show that is not, like, it's not aggressive about, like, this stuff. Like,
it's not passive. It's passively allowing.
It is so ingrained in the culture of the show that the show, I'm sure, doesn't even realize that it's doing it. Like The Strain is so fully on board with this stuff, with, like, this idea that women are damsels in distress, people of color are either monsters or, like, should be enslaved. Like, these ideas that the show just casually, like, through its storytelling promotes, but not through its dialogue. Like, it's so ingrained in the show that it can't even, like, see it. Yeah. It's like it is just part of the culture of the show. Yeah. And every story they tell with Gus and Dutch, like stems from that point, and then they have them do heroic things on the surface. It's like, but like, the basis of the story is that Dutch is a damsel in distress, and that Gus is like a monster.
Yes. Well, and that Dutch, also being a bisexual character, needs to be punished for her sexuality.
Oh, and that she will sleep with anything that walks. Which, again, was once again, like, referenced for no real reason at all. Like, they really shoehorned it in that she slept with this random dopey guy at the clinic.
No, but she didn't sleep with him. That's the point.
Oh, she made it up?
She made it up, which is also worse.
Wow, that's worse.
That's worse, right?
That's
okay,
worse.
So...
It's promoting this idea that women will weaponize this sexual harassment rape thing, like that they're just waiting for a chance to turn that against men.
Yes.
Just any man who looks at a woman, the woman will cry rape and oh, she's lying. Like, that's so much worse.
It's so
than
much
had
worse.
They actually
I
did
remember
it.
watching that and being infuriated when I listened to her giving this little speech to this guy who's supposed to be, like, helping her escape from the facility, that she's like, oh, I'll tell them that we did this and that we did that. And she doesn't make it sound like rape. She just makes it sound consensual. And then she's like,
right.
But they'll be so upset that you got your seed in me. Like,
Yeah.
which is just, like,
Ugh.
again, wacky bananas, bonkers, like, words that I don't want to use on a podcast because I like to refrain from swearing on podcasts.
Yeah.
But I have stricter words I would like to use. But yeah, no, it's insane to me that the Dutch character has once again been punished for her sexuality.
Yes.
And that the strain has opted to go in this, like, I'm sort of obvious route, but also deeply distressing route with female characters, that they become baby machines. Like, this is,
it's just weird.
it's I mean, it's weird. It's not something that it's like not a reach necessarily, but I think the extra reach that they did that I actually found really offensive was that they're doing this whole, like, suddenly the B positive or B I don't remember if it's B positive or B negative is what, like, tastes the best to them. Like, if that was the case, and if they went wild over B negative people before, why didn't Eichhorst eat Dutch when he had her chained up?
Right?
Why aren't all of the vampires B negative because they, like, would go crazy every time that they smelled a B negative person? It's like they needed to make a specific excuse to get Dutch into this, which I think is what's even more offensive. Instead of just rounding up the women like cattle, which is in itself, I mean, I feel like I'm stating the obvious to say that that's problematic, but but they have to justify it themselves as show creators. They have to come up with an excusable reason to be herding the women like cattle,
right?
Which is just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, they're working from a point in which women what they know is that women need to be enslaved.
Yes, so they needed to justify it.
So they needed to come up with a way to get to that point.
Yes.
That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, like, instead of the obvious, like, oh, well, people still need to be procreating because we still need to have a food source and we still need to have a quote-unquote partnership between our species, it's like, no, we need to have a very specific food source, and, like, it's one of those things where it's like I could go off, but then I'd start swearing.
It was also it seemed like such a small scale operation to me. Like, how many women were like being held in that facility?
Like 10 or less. I felt
10 or 11.
Yeah.
Like, and how many staff members? Like the director of the whole medical services, that guy whose name I forget all the time. Desai. He's been in like 3 episodes. It's still not clear his reason for existence, but okay. He was introduced, and he is like a head honcho in the Strigoi organization. Like, of the few members of the bad guy team we know, he is of them, and he is overseeing this facility that they must have like 100 staff members to take care of 10 women.
Yeah.
Like, they control, as I still don't understand how much they control, but something like the northeastern United States. Shouldn't it be like, if you're going to go in this direction, shouldn't it be like thousands? Like, shouldn't it be like a very large scale? This all seems so small to me.
Yeah, if you're really gonna go with it, why not go all out with it, right? Like, make it like the Matrix when they walk in and there's all the people in the pods. Just make it like this giant auditorium or larger full of women. Something
where the sight of it shocks you into like realizing, like, oh, this is like something very big. Like this is like a huge thing. Like, this is their food source. Like, because if it's like 10 women, even if they have other facilities, like, we know how many Strigoi there are. Like, I don't, and they're having babies to, like, I don't fully get what the thing is. Like what effect is these women having 10 babies going to have on anything? Like, then they have more babies? Like, how many, like, you could only have one child every, I mean, it's not, like, physiological. I just don't get it. Like, I don't get what effect, if it was, like, 1,000 women, I would understand, like, okay, well, at least there's, like, a clear effect. Like, this is their quote-unquote farm.
Right, they're
like,
doubling the population.
They're doubling the
population.
Yeah, right. If, like, these women are just but it's, like, it's so small that I don't get, like, I don't get it. Like, I don't.
And that's the thing, though. Again, like, with me harping on the fact that it's punishing Dutch, it's like, and the fact that it seems like they created specifically a reason to continue to punish Dutch.
That's it.
Like, imagine the scenario where instead of opening the episode on her face while this very invasive thing is happening to her, which was, again, like, I was sitting there like, oh God.
Yeah, like,
Like,
is this what we need?
Yeah, like goosebumps everywhere because it made me so uncomfortable because I knew where it was going. Like, imagine the scenario where you do open up in the giant room of women or in the giant facility of women, and then like you slowly come to the reveal that Dutch is there too.
Yes.
Instead of it, because again, this very much feels like it is a personal attack on that character for both being a woman and being a sexual character, and the fact that she also can't seem to conceive also seems to be just like a sleight of hand of like, also this is like she can't conceive because she's been such a
they're calling her. Yeah. They're calling her a failed woman. It's like she's failing at being a woman at every turn. She sleeps with everyone. She can't conceive. Guys, this is what the face of failure looks like. Yeah. Like that's what that's the message the show is communicating with that character, and that's why, like you said, she is always being punished for this. Like they always punish her, and you're right. Like that's. The only, I mean, I can only understand the decision to have this be such a small group. It's like a little tiny cell of women, and it's like, well, they either did that because of budget reasons, because they just can't afford to have that many extras or do the CGI or whatever, or it's just like they wanted to come up with the situation to maximize Dutch's like pain. Like, of course, it's a tight-knit group of women, so, you know, Dutch knows everyone else by name, and we can inflict the most amount of pain on her, you know, and it's just like, man, what does this, like, why, like, I just don't get the purpose of this. Like, I don't understand, like, from a like a big-picture storytelling perspective, why we're going these places. You know, like, why this has to be like that. Why does Gus have to be stealing things and putting his cousin in danger? Like, why? I'm sure the story is going to get somewhere eventually. I just don't know why these are the ways that the show is choosing to present itself to get that story started.
Well, I think, like, you know, big picture, I think we've kind of skirted this, is that, like, the worldview of these creators is very small.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to think that the whole world is New York.
Yes, true. And conflate the two to the point that I'm still not sure.
Right, that as viewers, as viewers, is the partnership in New York or is the partnership throughout? Yeah. Like, the worldview has been a single city that they've been fighting for, sometimes in a single borough. And, like, I mean, if you're just talking about a worldview that is actually, like, physical amount of land, but then also just, like, their view of, you know, how do mothers behave? How do alcoholics behave? Yeah. How do promiscuous women behave? How do people of color behave? Like, all of those answers are the answers of somebody who doesn't have a lot of experiences with all of those things, that has a single thing, a single story to tell about all of that. It's not the show that was presented in season 1. This is a show that this is how the show ends up by season 2. In season 1, it's a very worldly show. We meet a lot of characters from all over who happen to all be on the same flight, and we see lots of different types of. We see a lawyer and a rock star and a family man, and then you also have F who's fighting for his family, and like everybody's so much more complex. But as the show has continued, it's devolved, and it's become like this very distilled single idea of what does it mean to be whatever thing, and then that's how we're going to write that thing.
Yeah.
And it has been unwilling to change since it made that creative decision, or since the team made that creative decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's never had a diverse perspective outside of the sort of realm of middle-aged white men. Like, that is what the show specializes in. Like, white men between the ages of 25 and 45, basically. But you're right, like, the first season introduced a lot more characters that we could check in on. Like, I remember, like, Ansel, the guy who was on the plane, and his wife, and like you said, the lawyer characters. Like, progressively over the course of the show, it has lost that thing where we check in on small characters. Mm-hmm. Like, everything now is, what's Gus up to? What's Dutch up to? What's F up to? What's Fett up to? And all of our characters are revolving around them. Like, so, you know, there are various pairings of characters, but it's like, we just sort of cycle through scenes, and then it's like, what's the Master up to? What's Zach up to? Like, these are the main title credit sequence characters, and we just, every episode is just sort of cycling between them, checking up on them. There's no, like, or very little of what the first couple seasons did. Where it's like, this is a minor character who we are going to have like a B story in every episode about until they die. Like that idea has been completely lost on the strain now.
Yeah, I mean, those characters that F met in the last episode, we only see them with the context of F.
Right, it's all F. Like, it's not that they're not introducing characters, it's that the characters only exist in relation to those main characters. And that was not the case in the first season, as you pointed out. The first season had characters that independently existed with only a sort of tangential connection to our main characters, and then, like, our main characters would eventually make their way into those characters' lives. But it's like that sort of storytelling has gone out the window, and I think you're right. Like, the show misses that. It misses, like, it's never had a broad perspective on the world, and it's never done a good job of telling the story of this, like, the worldwide story. But it's done a better job in the past of telling a broader set of perspectives of showing a broader set of perspectives on the events that are happening. And this season has been just completely devoid of that.
Mm-hmm. And even most of last season.
Yeah, most of last season was,
all of it. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Very little do we get a character who is introduced and is not immediately a second banana to one of our main characters in their story.
Yes.
I mean, the great example is, I forget her name, the woman, Charlotte.
Yeah,
Charlotte. Like, who is Charlotte? I'm sure it's eventually we're going to know about her, but she currently exists only relative to Fett.
Well, and she literally only is in a scene that Fett is in, right? We don't see the other women trying to convince her that they're right and that we need the men for their physical strength for the labor. We see her come in already faux convinced of that. She's faking it. But, like, we don't get to see what might be an interesting exchange of her, like, of us not knowing if we can trust Charlotte, and then, she helps Fett in the end, and so it's okay. You know, like, we don't get any clever storytelling techniques because we only can see anything through the point of view of, what is it, our 5, 6, 7 characters that we have point of view of.
Yes. And like with Dutch, it's like those women in the clinic, like, there's a 0% chance that if Dutch wasn't placed there, we would be learning about them.
Right.
It's like that is, those characters exist because Dutch is there. And so they built characters around Dutch to tell whatever story they wanted to tell about Dutch. Like, their existence hinges on her presence. And as soon as she leaves, I suspect we will never check in with them again if any of them are still alive.
And also, would that idea have even would that idea have even been floated? And I mean this very seriously, just because it's not really in the books. Would that idea have been floated if they didn't have a female character to punish? They wouldn't have done that to Nora.
That's a good point. No, they would have never done that to Nora. Because they didn't they did portray Nora as sleeping with F, but not as generally promiscuous as they constantly do with Dutch. I think you're right. They could have chosen anywhere. Like, Dutch, because Dutch doesn't exist in the books.
Yeah,
they can choose whatever stories they want with Dutch. Right? She can exist anywhere. She can be used to illuminate any part of the world. And what they choose to use her for is a scene that was referenced in this episode, her being taken captive by Icorst and very nearly assaulted sexually in a really horrifying way, and her generally having bad things happen to her as a direct result of being promiscuous, and then in this episode, her being taken to, like, a baby breeding facility. Like, that's how the show chooses to use her.
Yes.
And there's no book tie-in. Like, they don't need to do that. They could have used Dutch. I mean, they could have used her in any number of ways to shed light on this world. They have completely forgotten that she is a hacker.
Right.
That the character exists because she is literally the world's best hacker. And you would think that if your character has a very specific skill that they are the best in the world at, that skill would eventually come back into play, and it has not.
It has not.
It has not at all. Like even freaking Zach was the one to uncover that the internet still could work some 2 seasons ago. They didn't even use Dutch for that.
Yeah. I mean, imagine she's in this facility. She should be able and we've seen her, like, last season, she helped F with a couple things where they were doing experiments on the Strigoi. Like, she's very clearly unsupervised at least a good portion of the time in this little facility. There's a number of little things she could be gathering and putting in her pockets to make something to help herself get out. Like,
yes,
we know that she can take something apart and collect the wires or collect the little bits that I know nothing about. But, like, you know, like, we as viewers know that about her, but instead we are just watching her be helpless and sad. And being punished, and that's just what I'm going to keep harping on.
And her master plan to get out is to, as you said, make up a story about having sex with an employee.
Yes.
Like, that's her plan. Like, that's, again, this is a character who the show did a little bit of work to establish is, like, a skilled mechanic. Like, someone who's skilled, like, right? They did a little bit of work last season. Like, boy, it would be great if she was doing something clever to, like, create a device, like you said. Like, coming up with a real plan. But no, of course, she is just leveraging her sexuality.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it goes bad.
Out in a fridge, which also, like, woman in a fridge is, like, a literal trope.
Right. But don't worry, the one that did go in the fridge didn't have the stomach for it. and busted out and freaked out and knocked everything over. It was the modern day version of tripping over a tree root as you are running from the serial killer.
Yeah. And also the hysterical woman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, she got hysterical. You know she got hysterical. So... yeah, it's just like, man, really? Like, this, and it's not, like, I want to, like, harp on this, because it's not, like, I'm not even taking, like, the moral stand against this. Like, I'm not even trying to take, like, the this is bad, so we should be mad at it perspective, which it is, and we should, but I'm not even coming at it from that angle. It's just the angle, like, this sucks. Like, this sucks to watch. Like, and just purely as television, forget all the, like, cultural stuff. It's bad as television.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing.
It's not clever. It doesn't make you think. It doesn't entertain.
No.
At most, it makes your stomach turn over on itself, you know? Like, it's...
right. And it's just, like, none of the characters are being smart. None of the characters have good ideas. None of the characters are doing anything that is even remotely interesting. We're just sort of slogging through this to get to whatever big action they have planned for the last few episodes. I don't get it. I don't
what
get,
is
like,
it gonna be? Like,
another nuclear bomb?
How are they all gonna come together? I mean, how are all of their skills gonna come together and be interesting again? Like, well, I mean, we saw Gus be, you know, a brute again. And I mean, it's just like all of the only person who's been using their skills so far on these first 2 out of 7 episodes to any effect that matters is F being a doctor again.
Yes,
but
right. And the show is very careful to give F, like, redemption stories. Like, the show treats F very lightly. It has a light touch with F that it doesn't with any other character except maybe Fett, where it's like, okay, he's gotta be an alcoholic, but he's also gotta be doing a good thing. Like, the show is very, very careful with F in a way that it is absolutely not with Dutch or Gus. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, it doesn't care, like, that Gus is doing terrible things. It doesn't care that Dutch is once again in danger. Like, that stuff doesn't matter. But with F, the show is very careful to make sure that character, like, is sympathetic at every turn, you know, and that when he does something wrong, he knows he did something wrong and he can learn from it and get better.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's even more infuriating now that I just thought about? That Dutch is, like, incredibly competent when they go to the flashback. No, in this episode, when they go to the flashback with her and Satrakian trying to escape.
Right.
She murks, like, 5 Strigoi.
Oh, yeah.
All on her own.
Action hero.
Yeah, action hero status. Like, she's doing super duper well.
Yeah.
And then, like, the only reason that she gets snagged is because she is a woman with a certain blood type. Like, Satrakian is right next to her and they don't grab her. It's like... Sorry.
Yeah. No, I know.
Like,
that was a good scene. That was a good scene, by the way, of her, like, doing cool stuff. Like, hey, got some action.
Yeah, I like to see her be an action hero. That's fun.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because when Dutch is competent, she's actually a really enjoyable character. When she's not using her sexuality in a weird way, and when her sexuality isn't being forced on her in a weird way, she's actually like a really fun and interesting character.
Right. Well, that's what I was begging for. That's what I'm always begging for with Dutch, is give her something to do. Like, if she gets captured, fine. She should immediately be coming up with like the kind of plan that the best hacker in the world would come up with, like someone who is, by virtue of her introduction, a genius. Like, shouldn't she be coming up with a really cool plan to get out? It's like, no, she's just doing the sort of, like, she comes up with, like, the laziest plan that immediately fails. Like, that's, it's like, that character should always be competent. And they just don't take any care to make sure of that.
Also, Desai, the gentleman, offered her an opportunity that she denied. Isn't that also sort of against... Am I incorrect? Is that sort of against... Because we've seen her be a strategist before.
Yes. Oh yeah. She's playing the most straightforward game possible, which is, I hate the Strigoi. I'm never going to compromise. Go away. Like, rather than yeah, you're right. Any kind of cleverness in like, hey, let's. this is what we talked about last week. The show apparently is unaware of the concept of deception. And everyone has to... subterfuge is not something that has ever been involved with the strain. Like, the show has never broached the topic of someone not saying exactly what they are thinking at every possible moment. Like, on the strain, there is no subtext. There is purely text, and the text is spoken by all of our characters at all the time. Like, Dutch, like, the guy clearly, like, has a soft spot for her. Why not play that against him and, like, work an angle? But no, she shuts him down immediately because that's what heroes do. It's like, oh my gosh, like, no one is playing any kind of mind games on the strain.
I know, except for Icorst occasionally.
Icorst occasionally, yeah, Icorst. This episode really missed Icorst.
Yeah, this episode missed a lot of things.
Yeah, I was also mad at something in F's. I've been so mad I forget I forget all of what I'm angry about, and then I'm gonna listen back and be mad that I forgot to say something.
I mean, I'm glad that you remembered all that stuff about Gus, frankly, because I was so like seeing red over this Dutch stuff that I glossed over everything else in this episode.
No, yeah, I knew you'd be rightfully worked up about Dutch.
Yeah, and I want to be more eloquent about it. I want to go off on a huge tangent about why it's wrong, but I feel like it's obvious, and like it's like one of those things where if I say it, it's like it feels unreal to be talking about it. Like, I know that we're living in a world where we have the Handmaid's Tale, and we have Mad Max Fury Road, and
we have real life.
And we have real life. Thanks, God.
Just real life.
Thanks, God. Remember who was president the last time we podcasted? Not saying anything more.
That hurts.
But I'm trying to think. I know that there's another thing out there that's also like circling this thing. And well, we have Man in the High Castle, which is a Nazi thing, which is similar to what's happening in this. It's like just this barrage of ideas of how much women are lesser, and how much our ability to give birth is like able to be used against us. And it's one of those things where it's like, at first with Mad Max Fury Road, that was really an interesting thing and exciting for women, and it made us feel like, cool, rah we this is a great story of showing how we can stand up for ourselves. And now it's just like that is suddenly become the interesting story to tell again. I've made jokes before. I don't know if I've done it on this podcast or not, but like back in like 2009, maybe 2008, like the big thing to do with your female characters, it just feels like something is like there's something in the air or something. At that time, the big thing to do was to make them be sexually assaulted, and it happened like on everything. Most notably, it happened to Benson on Law & Order SVU. And in what universe do you think it's a good idea to have your female character who is saving women from being sexually assaulted also be sexually assaulted? I don't know where that comes from. But like, we are living in a world where I feel like the constant barrage of messaging is that women's reproduction is something that can be used against us in a way that, like, sure... Sorry, I'm going off.
Nope.
Like, sure, we have the debate over birth control and all that other stuff, but that it can be used against us as a weapon, that it can be weaponized, that it can be used as enslavement. Those are terrible messages to have constantly going around in your head. And I can't imagine being like a 15-year-old watching all this stuff right now. You know, like if I were a 15-year-old girl. I was 15 and I had Buffy, and that's really exciting for me.
Yeah.
Like, now if you're 15, you have The Handmaid's Tale and Mad Max Fury Road and The Strain, and I'm not saying like any of, like, the former two are bad. They're great. Those are good stories to tell. They're good allegory. They are inspiring, and they should help, you know, women feel like the desire to rise up. But it's also like this just barrage of horrible information, and you come to The Strain, and like if you were a teenage girl who really liked vampires or just like action shows or whatever, and you know you're just watching it casually, I don't know, that would be a really rough message. Not that TV shows should be held responsible to their audience or anything like that, but it's just like it's not being used in an interesting or inspiring way. Dutch isn't being interesting or inspiring in this story, as I'm circling the drain and saying again, she's being punished. And that's where it doesn't land. In Mad Max Fury Road, they're escaping, they're taking back ownership of their bodies. In The Handmaid's Tale, the same thing, taking back ownership of their bodies. This is you know, if you show your legs too much and you kiss too many boys, then you know, then you forfeit your right to your own body. All right, I did it. There's your tangent.
There you go. You got your rant. No, and I mean, it's like you bring up those things, and to me, it's like it's never the content. Like I'm a big believer that shows can. Like whatever they like, I to me, I never go into a situation where because a plot point exists, I condemn a show. Like to me, that is the worst kind of criticism, where you say like because a show or a movie is doing this, it is wrong, rather than looking at it in context. What like those shows like Mad Max and Handmaid's Tale, like what those shows have that The Strain doesn't is empathy. Mm-hmm. Like those movies, shows have a strong perspective, a strong sense of the perspective of the victims. And that's baked into every decision that they make. And that is what The Strain is lacking. Like Dutch is in this situation because the show wanted to put Dutch in this situation, and it just doesn't seem like there was a lot more thought than that. Like there's no evidence to understand that The Strain wants us to see things from Dutch's perspective. They are using her to give us a perspective on this one aspect of why the Strigoi are bad, which is something that we've known since the start. Like they aren't using this to illustrate anything about Dutch or to make any kind of comment on, you know, on her situation or the situation of those women. And there's no like underlying understanding. That I think the best shows, when they get into material that is upsetting or you know of that nature, the best shows and movies demonstrate that, and they come at it from a perspective of like knowledge and empathy and care, frankly. And that was honestly, like, not to bring up Game of Thrones for the 20th time in 2 podcasts, but like that was the criticism of the Sansa scene a couple seasons of Game of Thrones ago. Where it's not what happened to Sansa, it's that the show didn't handle it with any level of empathy, and it showed it from the perspective of men, and like that's what The Strain does anytime they find themselves in this kind of situation. right like that's the problem.
Yeah, no, and that's actually an excellent point. It's not, and I also agree, it's not the existence of a plot point, it's the handle, the care, and the perspective. It's whether you're coming from the perspective of the perpetrator or the victim, and The Strain is, as much as they'd like to make us believe, because we open up on her eyes and we're watching, you know, this thing happen to Dutch. That's we have the voyeuristic perspective. We have the perspective of the perpetrator. We don't have the perspective of the victim in this situation. That was spot on.
There's just nothing in the show's storytelling that indicates that they really respect Dutch as like a person that exists.
Right.
They're not giving her any kind of dignity. The way that, again, the way that they do with F. It's like, if like someone disagrees with this, I urge you to watch the episode and watch how F is treated by the show. Not the plot points. Forget about the plot points. Watch how the show treats F and watch how the show treats Dutch. Like, the sort of, the way that they have Dutch behave, the way that they have other characters talk about Dutch, and the way that they, like, give F, like, so much agency, and, like, they allow F to be the smartest person in the room, and F is like, they let him be this flawed protagonist who, just off the top of his head, comes up with this brilliant idea at the end of the episode. You know, it's like, they give F things that, like, are designed to have the audience respect him. Dutch doesn't get that. Like, they don't give Dutch any little moments that would lead the audience to respect her. And that's the problem. Like, that's the problem, is that they don't treat her with dignity and respect the way that they do F and when he's on screen Fett. And it's just like that contrast is the problem.
Yeah, and you could argue, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, you could argue that they did give her some of those scenes, but they take it away immediately by having her leverage her sexuality with
right, yeah. The overall, like, they try to create moments, but the overall tenor of the story is so cynical for her.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the problem. Is like we said, it's always surface level.
Yeah.
Like, what is ingrained in the show's DNA is this just lack of respect.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately hasn't really changed
Nope.
at any point. Like, that's been the show, and the show just hasn't ever done anything to correct that.
Nope. And I would say that this is probably a seal the deal situation where they're not going to.
No, I think we're now down the home stretch. I mean, if they couldn't pull it together for this, I don't know. I mean, we're running out of episodes for the show to get it. I think it's time to blow out that candle.
Right. Watch the show have, like, a phenomenal series finale.
It could.
Both get our minds blown.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, you didn't. We watched Westworld together. You didn't like most of Westworld. I thought Westworld had a phenomenal finale. I think shows can get it together for a finale. Now, do I think that will happen? No. Nope. Flat no.
Yeah, and Westworld had 3 solid episodes, and one of those episodes was the finale. I
Yeah.
wasn't pleased by it, but that was one of the 3, like, excellent episodes.
Well, the finale was like 6 hours long, so you had to fix something to like.
Yeah, exactly. But we digress.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else to talk about
No,
this episode?
This was depressing. Like, this is the worst kind of Strain episode where nothing happens, and it's like, it offends us on a level. Like, this was the worst kind of episode to talk. I hate this kind of Strain episode where it's not fun bad, it's just bad, and the show is making all the mistakes that it's made before. We sound like a broken record, and there's just not a lot. There's not a lot to enjoy because it was a very unenjoyable episode. Like,
Of television, period.
Yeah, of television. Yeah, it's just like not enjoyable. Like for a myriad of reasons. But it's like something has to happen on this show. Like, something has to happen. That's what I'm gonna say going forward. Please, in the next episode, something happen.
I know, they gave them 7 episodes and they couldn't get their.
They couldn't make 7 fun episodes on the premise that vampires now rule the world. Like, wow. You're 0 for 2 so far.
Yeah. Well, and we're probably going to get Zach again in the next episode.
Oh, yeah, we have to. We sort of alternate between our sets of characters. So Zach is part of set A. So, ready for some more Zach.
Oh, fun. Looking so forward to it.
Oh, man.
I don't know about you, but at this point, all bets are off. I have no predictions. There's a couple.
You've read the books.
I've read the books, and this was not that.
Yeah. I knew it. Because the Dutch focus, she's not in the books. Like, this felt like the show sort of doing a little freestyle.
Yeah, when they freestyle, they always do wrong.
Yeah.
Except for Creatures of the Night.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. They really got it right in the first season, and then it all went downhill.
Yeah. What happened? I mean, I know what happened. They not just Sweden. Wow. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
Just kind of decided to walk away from the project, and for good reasons, because it's wacky bananas.
It was apparently beyond saving.
Yes.
Like, I would have liked to have seen, like, a new showrunner come in, season 4, just churn out a banger of a final season, give everyone like happy thoughts going away. That is, based on the evidence, that is not what has happened.
Is this just proof that Carlton Cuse shouldn't be a showrunner?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak ill of him outside of the context of this show we watch, but it's not good. I mean,
he also took over for the last couple seasons of Lost.
I thought he was involved in like the start of Lost too.
Was he? Oh,
I thought he was the co-showrunner, and then he took over late. Like, I don't know. I don't know enough about Carlton Cuse to make like any proclamations about him, but I do know that this is not promising. This is to put it in the lightest possible terms. Yeah. What has gone on with The Strain is not promising.
That's an excellent way to put it. Not good.
Not good, not promising.
Despicable and not promising.
Yeah. Yep. The Strain. That's our subtitle for The Strain Season 4. Not good, despicable, not promising.
I should just make that our Twitter bio. The Twitter bio for our show. Not good, despicable, not promising.
Yeah.
All right. Well. That's all for now, I think, unless you've got anything else.
No. I'm tired.
Okay.
Please, I need a good episode next week, Blair. I'm rooting for The Strain. Like, I need a good. We're committed to watching it. We're committed to talking about it. I need a good episode next week. I need action. I need some semblance of plot to start to emerge from the morass. Like, I need. Give me something, The Strain, please.
Yeah, I just need Fett to go on like a muncher killing spree, and then I'll be happier.
I'd be a lot
happier.
happier.
And Quinlan, just give us like a 5-minute straight shot of just them running around and killing Strigoi, and I think like we'd all be much happier.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, on that note, sorry everybody, we tried.
We tried.
we are trying. We're sticking this out for you. This wraps up our 41st episode of the Strain Podcast. Before we go, I want to mention a few things. You can download and subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You can also hear all of our podcasts at our website, southgatemediagroup.com. Please subscribe to the show and also rate us. Follow the show on Twitter at The Strain Pod, and Kyle and I at Kyle Loves TV and at Blair Loves TV. And remember, that's Blair and Kyle with an E. Send us fan mail at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to play hashtag... Oh, no.
Nope, not anymore.
No Strain Bingo. Nobody contacted me to take over, though. So, guys...
I think a lot of people have given up on The Strain.
I think that nobody's watching this show.
Yeah. Like, earlier when you said 15-year-old girls watching this, I was like, no. They're not watching The Strain.
Nobody's watching this.
We're just talking into the void.
As we do. But we love all of you who are still tuning in and sticking it out with us. All right, well, don't play the Strain Bingo this week unless you want to take over the Strain Bingo, in which case, email us, tweet at us. We'd be happy to hand it over. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.